Welcome to APTA's annual meeting session, Rethinking Urban Mobility, sponsored by Arcadius US. Please welcome a member of APTA's Board of Directors and the Mobility Management Committee Chair, Marlene Connor.
We now have the privilege of hearing from Sonja Heikkilä, who's the architect of the plan that is going to free Helsinki from car ownership. And isn't that just a great idea? Earlier this year, Sonja was commissioned by the city of Helsinki in Finland to write her master's thesis on the topic of mobility as a service. So think about that. And really think about what that means. It's really understanding not just that we run buses and trains and then we drive cars, but it's really about mobility and how do we make mobility work. She is now taking her idea from her master's thesis and working to implement that concept from inside her city's planning department. Sonja earned her Master's of Science in Technology from Aalto University School of Engineering and has previously worked in traffic, road, and rail planning. The city's plan to transform the transport sector, with Sonja at the helm, has gained international attention. It's been covered in the Washington Post, The Time, The Guardian, The Business Insider. And today, Sonja is with us to tell us how those plans are unfolding and how Helsinki is creating an environment for a service ecosystem to emerge. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sonja to the stage. Really excited that she's here.
Here, and I want to thank APTA for organizing such a great conference that I have been enjoying. I'm very honored to be on this stage today. So I am Sonja Heikkilä and I come from Finland. Today I am going to talk about rethinking urban mobility, and actually I'm going to talk about a quite radical transformation of the transport industry that we have been and continue planning in Finland. I work for the City Planning Department of the City of Helsinki, and we have been planning this concept 2 years now. So this radical transformation is actually based on a concept that we call mobility as a service. And by this, we mean that we really want to offer all transportation, all mobility as one full service. So as Marlene already said, this plan of ours has drawn enormous attention. It has been referred to over 300 times in the media internationally during the summer. All significant institutions in Finland support this initiative, including the Finnish government. Furthermore, the European Union has raised this topic as one of their priorities in the coming years. But why should transportation be so radically transformed? Well, the society is being affected by so-called megatrends, but these megatrends also have a strong impact on transportation. To begin with, due to urbanization, large cities are becoming even larger. For example, Helsinki is expected to grow 45% in the next 35 years. That is a huge number of people moving to the city. But as this growth will happen through densification, there will be no space for increasing motor traffic. So there might not yet be much congestion in Helsinki, but there will be if we do not react. But as we saw earlier this morning, social change brings high expectations in transportation as well. Social change refers to the younger generations, Generation Y and the Millennials. These generations are born in an era with modern information and communications technologies. Of course, they are thus used to be continuously connected online, of course. They want to be connected to their friends, families, to people around them, but also to systems that affect their course of action. They are used to fast exchange of information in real time, and of course, they assume everything to work via their smart devices. It's also been noted that the young do not want to stick one travel mode, but actually they prefer to be multimodal. And they do not care of owning a car that much anymore. In fact, in Stockholm, only 9% of the young who are allowed to acquire driving license do that. Only 9%. But the young also want to be spontaneous, and they want the systems to be flexible and adapt to their needs, and not the other way around, as we unfortunately in transportation now have. That I think people need to make way too many compromises in transportation today, whether they are driving or using public transportation. Oh, sorry. One back. So sharing economy and servicizing are, of course, remarkably important phenomena in transportation. Sharing economy means that people want to share items and possessions instead of owning them. So they can use an item when they need it, but they do not need to own them by themselves. Servicizing, then again, means that people actually value the outcome of an action more than doing the action by themselves. So they want to buy the outcome as a service. We have examples of sharing economy and servicizing in transportation. Sharing economy appears in, for example, of course, in car sharing or bike sharing and ride sharing. Whereas servicizing appears in taxi services, of course, but also in many new services that we are having, for example, Uber and Lyft. So we have examples of servicizing in transportation, or some parts of transportation are servicized. But actually, we want to servicize all transportation. And that is what we are going to do with this concept of mobility as a service, as one full service. In fact, these phenomena of sharing economy and servicizing are linked to urbanization, because many of those people moving to cities are also young. Well, when moving to cities, they are often compelled to move in small apartments. So it's no wonder that these people do not want to use their few square meters to store wear that they actually need only once or twice a year. Sustainability is, of course, a vast driver for development, also in transportation. And this concept of mobility as a service, it promotes the use of public transportation, as it will be complemented with other services. So it promotes the sustainability of transportation. But in addition to these needs for change, or these challenges, the development of technology actually brings us so many opportunities to develop transportation. With means of technology, we can make transportation easier, more convenient, and also more efficient. So I think we should exploit technology more in transportation. But let's get back to the current situation in transportation. Well, currently we use all transport services separately. We have public transportation, we have bike sharing, rental cars, car sharing, taxi services. We have many services, but unfortunately we need to use all of these separately and pay for them separately. And in the worst case, which is actually most cases, we also need to register to each service and perhaps create an account. Well, I think that is way too difficult way to use these services. And maybe that is one reason why many of these services are underutilized. They are only used by a small group of people, and they are not mainstream. And this is why many have to rely on public transportation. Well, public transportation, then again, can rarely really sufficiently meet the individual needs of people. And I think public transportation can never solve the dilemma of the first and the last mile. So because of these reasons, many have decided to own a car. And we can discuss if people need a car or not, but it is enough if they feel that they need a car, because, of course, the decisions made by them are based on this perception. So one solution to this challenge in transportation could be the concept of mobility as a service. So mobility as a service is a Finnish concept that we have now been developing around 2 years. But before going any further, I want to clarify some terms that I'm going to use during this talk so that we talk about the same things. By transport service producers, I mean companies that produce transport services. They can be bus services or rail services or car sharing service or taxi services. But next, I'm going to introduce you to mobility operators, which are a vital part of this new concept of mobility as a service. Mobility operators are private companies operating as an intermediary between those transport service producers and users. Well, in this concept of mobility as a service, mobility operators constitute a so-called mobility operator market, as there are several mobility operators. And these mobility operators actually buy different separate transport services wholesale from their service producers. Mobility operators then process these separate services into one full supply of services, which they then offer to their customers. As a result, customers get highly individual transport service, which meets their individual needs. But what does this then mean really in the everyday life of people? Well, here's Ashley, a very concrete example on how this transformation appears in the everyday life of users. In the current situation, Ashley has a public transport travel card, which costs around 100 euros in Helsinki region. But because she has many travel needs that cannot sufficiently be met by public transportation, she also has a car. Well, as a result, she needs to pay a great deal from her transportation, and in addition, she still needs to take care of the maintenance, insurance, inspections, and parking of the car. Well, in the reorganized situation, Ashley could have a service package, for example, of this kind. In this package, Ashley would have all transportation services available to her, provided by her mobility operator. She could use public transportation, but also taxi services, car sharing services, even long-haul public transportation. Ashley even has a 50% discount from home deliveries of groceries because her mobile operator has made a contract with the local groceries. And there is even an incentive to use shared rides, as each shared ride gains Ashley a free coffee. Please know that this is only an example of a service package. There could be packages of any kind, because these packages are provided by the private company's mobility operators. Or, of course, users could also pay according to their exact use of services. Actually, we can compare or parallel this kind of service package thinking to telecommunications. In the same way, customers sign a contract with one of the operators and then may use services provided by that operator. They can pay, for example, with a monthly bill, and in case users are not satisfied with the service, they can always vote with their feet and choose another operator. But in fact, it is not that essential which travel mode Ashley uses, but she wants to get from place A to place B. So that is why the service package could also look like this. This package is based on a service level agreement. That means that Ashley and her mobile operator has a contract that in 7 minutes there will be some travel means available to Ashley. So if there is no public transportation nearby, the operator could offer her, for example, a shared ride, which is just leaving 5 minutes from her, or there might be a shared car down the street, or then, in case there is no other means, a taxi will pick her up in 7 minutes. This kind of service level agreement is essential when we think about how public transportation can compete with car ownership. Car often has a good service level, as it is standing in the driveway, it is always available, and you can drive to your destination. But if we could have the same kind of service level in public transportation, maybe complement with additional services, that would really be something to compete with car ownership. And of course, Ashley could also roam between different service areas. So for example, if Ashley would want to travel from Helsinki to Houston, she could use transport services in Houston through her own mobility operator in Helsinki, in the same way as in telecommunications. But what does this transformation then mean to the organization of the transport sector? Well, here's an illustration. It's not working that well. On this systemic change related to this transformation. Well, currently, transportation, including socially necessary transportation, is purchased from public transport planning authorities or directly from transport service producers, such as taxis. Also, public transportation is subsidized by municipalities and governments. Well, in the transformed situation, we would have mobility operators, a new layer in the transport sector. And in this case, purchase of transportation, including socially necessary transportation, would be directed to mobility operators, which would have the latitude to wisely organize transport services to meet the given needs. So actually, they would not be said that I need this transport service here, but they just have the freedom to figure it out themselves, which is the most efficient way to produce that service. And we could also discuss whether subsidization could be broadened to concern a larger or more extensive set of transport services by directing it to mobility operators. Sorry. We have found that the concept of mobility as a service has several extensive benefits. First of all, of course, the winners are the users, because users are offered a highly individual, high-quality service. Because of the strong presence of the private sector, the services will be of high quality, and of course, due to competition, there will be competitive pricing in the services. These mobility operators will, of course, have strong user orientation as they need to win customers, and the services would be available to use through smart devices, for example, through an application. But the concept also creates business. So the mobility operator market is a totally new market, and we would see these new companies, mobility operators. But actually, the so-called service ecosystem that we are creating here with this concept would be so open that it would be easily entered by companies of all sizes, by small, medium, and large companies that produce different kinds of services. And as I already said, we can compare this or parallel this transformation in the revolution in telecommunications in 1980s and 1990s. Well, as we know, that revolution led to a high success of companies that were involved in that business. But the money in transportation, the money that people are using in transportation a month is about 300 euros, the average revenue per user, whereas it was, or it is, only 20 or 30 euros in telecommunications. So if we could experience any similar transformation in transportation, we could only imagine what the outcome of that revolution would be. We also think that due to the stronger presence of the private sector, we will see more innovation in transportation, in transport services, and also rapid deployment of that innovation and modern technologies. And the best thing of this concept actually is that it is thoroughly scalable. So the concept can be scaled to other cities and other countries. And actually, these mobility operator companies could end up being international companies. But of course, the concept also benefits the city and its residents. As with this concept, we aim to offer such good public transportation and more than public transportation with additional services. We think that it would really meet the individual needs of people more flexible than car. So this is why this concept actually contributes to decline in car ownership. And of course, declined number of cars in cities would release capacity from parking and roads, and that way ease congestion. And this capacity or this space could also be used through other purposes. But it's also significant that cars at the moment, they are used only 5% of time. So 95% of time, they are standing still. So, but there is still high capital in these cars. So it would be great if we could transform this capital from car ownership to using different kinds of mobility services. This way, the amount of money in transportation would also increase. And of course, decline in the number of cars would end up in healthier, safer, and more attractive cities. But actually, the concept also benefits the transport industry. The mobility operators would have the freedom to organize transport services as they see is the most efficient way. Also, the utilization rate of cars would become larger due to that fact that cars would be used by multiple users. And actually, the capital cost of the car would also be distributed to multiple users. So, of course, using is more affordable than owning it. And significant is also that transport service producers could actually, due to this concept, concentrate on their core business, which is, of course, transport service production and transport service development. And this is due to the fact that advertising, customer service, and fare management would be taken care of by the mobility operators. Sorry. Here is an example of an innovative transport service that we already have in operation in Helsinki. I want to show this example as the new service ecosystem would promote the emergence of new transport services. And this service, Kutsu Plus, we can also call it Call Plus, is a demand-responsive transport service which can be ordered by users, but the car will collect also other users from the route that has been automatically optimized according to the calls. But let's move on. So the tricky part, of course, is how to implement this concept. I work for the city of Helsinki, and we are especially interested in how the city and how the public governance can contribute to the implementation of the concept. Well, a year ago, or during last year, we made a rough action plan for the implementation, and that was actually my master's thesis, which Marlene already mentioned. And I have here some of the results, but in fact, we are now already working on a more precise and more concrete action plan for the implementation. First of all, we need to have true discussion between stakeholders. In order to create such an ecosystem that takes into account all needs for different stakeholders, we need to know these needs already in the beginning. And of course, the new mobility operator market has to be established. This includes the establishment of the mobility operators, and also current players in the market need to be prepared to radical changes. And we at the city, we are thinking of how we could promote the emergence of this market. What are the actions that we can do? And actually now we really want to hear from companies entering the market that what do they need. We will make them happen. Secondly, we need to revise legislation according to this concept. And actually, laws concerning passenger transport sector or services in Finland are already being revised at the moment. And the concept of mobility as a service has a high impact on the outcome of that process. But even more important is to create an appropriate regulation for the emerging mobility operator market. And we are thinking whether this market could have a regulation applied from another industry. And also what kind of regulation this should be. It should be open enough so that the market can still evolve. But third, the deregulation of public transport ticket sales is important in this concept. So at the moment, public transportation or their tickets are sold by the Regional Transport Authority in Helsinki, which organizes public transportation. Well, in the concept, all transport services, including public transportation, will be offered by the mobility operators. So of course, they need to be allowed to sell also public transport tickets. And fourth, as already mentioned, we need to revise purchase and subsidization procedures. So in the future situation, purchase of transportation would be directed to mobility operators. And how are we proceeding at the moment? So these were actions that we created a year ago or during the last year. But now we are already planning pilots. We are planning them and hope to launch several of them next year. And concerning pilots, we have several different approaches and are creating more. For example, we are thinking whether a workplace or a company could, instead of offering a parking space and a leasing car, could actually offer some money to be used to these mobility services to their employees. And now we are truly creating a more precise and concrete action plan. And actually the pace of this development in Helsinki is so rapid now that the situation is changing every week. So we have to update our plan once in a while. And we have cooperation with cities in Finland, and we are going to have with other cities in Europe, and hopefully we also in future have cooperation with cities in America. And at this point, the involvement of the private sector is turning from discussion to more concrete in form of pilots, for example. I now declare Finland as a country for open traffic experiment. Finland is a traffic lab. This is what the Finnish Minister of Transport and Local Government, Henna Virkkunen, announced in June in Helsinki. So this really shows that the Finnish government is committed to this initiative. And I encourage all companies and investors to come to Finland and try out, because Finland will be one of the best countries to test this kind of service ecosystem. But I want to end with a short video produced by the Finnish Ministry of Transport and Communications. And this video shows very well what it is really all about. I want to thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Sonja. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Please have a seat here.
Thank you.
And wasn't that just totally fascinating? Actually, we have, if you'll notice, a few extra chairs here. So we are going to invite some of our fellow APTA members to the podium here and to the stage to talk through some of these concepts and ideas that Sonja's been sharing with us. And I'm going to invite Catherine Kortum and Ron Barnes to the stage. So Ron Barnes is the Chief Operating Officer of the Maryland MTA, where he directs the core operations including light rail, metro subway, local bus, and mobility services. Ron brings more than 30 years of experience in both public and private sector leadership of transportation organizations. He's a past chair of APTA, and he has served as a national leader in advancing innovation, information, and concept sharing in public transportation. He holds a BA degree in economics from North Carolina A&T State University, and he also completed graduate coursework in urban studies at Trinity University. And I'd also like to invite Catherine. Oh, Catherine, you're here. Catherine is actually a program officer at TRB, where she analyzes transportation policy topics. She's the chair of Young Professionals in Transportation. She holds a PhD in transportation engineering from the University of Texas at Austin, and she's working on a lot of research with respect to intercity passenger travel, regulation of new mobility options, transit asset management, and a lot in the way of federal research processes. What we're going to do here is have a conversation regarding Sonja's presentation and then open it up to the floor. And I think, you know, as a rule, we love change, don't we? Change is great. We love it. We all embrace it. Okay, so what Sonja presented was really a different idea of mobility, and we'd like to begin to hear from you all on how to, where this will direct us as a country. Don't know if I need this. Do I need this? Okay. So I'm going to start by talking about integrated mobility. And the Mobility Management Committee has been working on this topic now for the last number of months, trying to understand from a partner perspective what about mobility is changing. And if you walk the floor at the expo this week, you couldn't walk 5 booths without seeing a technology application somewhere. We've had some interested presentations and partners here from both transportation network companies. I'm not sure if folks met the individuals from Bridge. Bridge was on the floor. They're a transport company that's operating in Boston. Some of the other network companies that we have that are working with us from a national perspective, Uber and Lyft. So there's a lot of movement and activity with respect to public transportation and how the pieces all fit together. And I think the reality here is that the transportation network companies and the mobility that has allowed this shared economy to impact transportation isn't going away. And I think it's our responsibility as public transportation professionals to try to understand how the pieces fit together. Ron, when he was chair of the Mobility Management Committee, he and I have been talking about this for a very long time. And it's really an exciting opportunity, but I will say it doesn't come without challenges, and that's why we wanted to open the conversation today to those folks that are here at the APTA meeting so that we can begin to hear from you. And it's really going to be important as our economy shifts to a shared economy, to this idea of collaborative consumption. Maybe we rethink what we provide with regard to services and understand them more from a mobility perspective than from a I operate a bus, I operate a train, and I hope it works for you perspective. So, so here we are, and I'd like to actually start with Ron. Do you have some comments?
Thank you, Marlene. And first of all, let me congratulate Sonja. Great job. We've spent many, many years trying to put this concept together, and you captured it in your thesis. But over the last For years, we've had a mobility management committee that was approved by the APTA executive committee, and the objective was to do what you just talked about and outlined, and that is outlining a coordinated, integrated mobility approach, encouraging the use of all the resources in a community to meet the needs of our riders. When you think about, and some various reports have talked about why 25 to 30% of all the jobs in our community are only accessible by public transit. There's another 75 to 70% out there that we're not touching. And we don't have the resources to put a big bus, light rail, or BRT to every job. So we have to become creative, and that was really the purpose of the Mobility Management Committee, to really start that dialogue, to think about how we focus more on the needs of our customer versus the mode by which they're going to travel. And earlier conversation, a presentation this morning, the speaker talked about utilizing all the resources and services in your community. That was basically mobility management.
Thank you, Ron. Catherine, love to get some thoughts from you on Sonja's presentation before we open it up to the audience.
Congratulations. Thank you. I've been to Helsinki a handful of times, and I've always been at midsummer, which probably explains why I think it's such a wonderful place. I can only imagine had I been there in December. Helsinki, I think, is one of the best cities in the world for implementing one of these kind of systems. It's a relatively compact city. It's already got a pretty strong transit usage. It's got there's huge potential there for a system like this to work and then start spreading out around the world, hopefully to the United States, but that might take a little longer. We have the opportunity to learn a lot from what Helsinki is trying to put together, but there's no question that we can't directly take what they're doing and apply it to cities here. Houston is not Helsinki, in case you hadn't noticed. There are a lot of differences between the cities. But we can take a few notes from them to figure out how to make people drive a little bit less, make it so that you're not always trying to drive your car. And to that respect, there are a lot of options out there. Not everybody, many planners often think of, if I'm not driving, then I must be taking the bus. And that is so limiting. There are so many ways of getting around, getting from point A to point B that have nothing to do with driving your own car or taking the bus. There are a wide variety of types of transit. There's bike share, there's biking on your own bike, there's walking, there's driving your own car. And there are a lot of new innovative services coming out. Uber, Lyft, Sidecar. Everybody always forgets about Sidecar as one of the options, and Sidecar will request that you not forget about them.
So noted.
They are definitely smaller than the others, but they are out there. Bridge, the new pop-up transit system, which sounds an awful lot like Kutsu Plus, which I'm probably not pronouncing exactly right, but
yeah, you are.
There are a lot of these options out there that don't fit neatly into the existing regulatory structures, and therefore that's creating a lot of conflict, both within the United States and around the world. Some of these services may not be in Helsinki yet, but they're certainly in large parts of Europe, and there have been significant arguments. You've probably heard some of the German and London arguments against Uber, Lyft, et cetera. The Transportation Research Board is trying to stay on the cutting edge of this. And we are working on a policy study that is looking at these regulations. We are trying to determine what appropriate regulations should be, or what a methodology for creating these regulations should be. And there are a lot of stakeholders involved in this. With regard to Uber, Lyft, Sidecar, and other transportation network companies, taxis are obviously a huge stakeholder. They have plenty of opinions on the subject and are not afraid to share them. But there are a lot of other stakeholders as well, cities in particular, various jurisdictions that are trying to figure out how to regulate these, the users, all of us who are trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And public transit is a stakeholder that is often overlooked, and I wish it weren't. There's a question as to whether some of these things will be complementary or more of a competition for public transit. And saying that they are one or the other is about as simplistic as saying that your choices for transit or for moving are either your car or a bus. It is a much more complicated subject than that. So as we put together these regulations, as TRB does, to put out our recommendations that will come out next summer, we would definitely like to have public transit involved in the discussion. That is hugely important. We can't imagine overlooking such a stakeholder as public transit, and we'll be working with APTA and the Mobility Management Committee. And we look forward to hearing from all of you who are sitting out in this room, who I can't see very well because of the lights, but I assume you're out there. We look forward to hearing from you to make the complex issue a little bit clearer, and hopefully next summer there will be some sort of clarification on these topics.
Great, thank you, Catherine. We have, the Mobility Management Committee has been working with some partner agencies. We've been talking to AARP, we've been talking to National League of Cities, we've been talking to TRB, because it's really important to understand within a context how all of the pieces need to fit together for all of our partners. I think the most important concept of mobility management really is understanding the partnership aspect of it, and who are the right partners, and how do we make sure that we're engaging all of the partners in the conversation, and that public transportation, you know, clearly from our perspective here, we understand public transportation is the leader in that thought process, and we want to make sure that we assume the role of the leaders of the conversation of mobility in our communities. And so there's really an opportunity here as this concept grows to make that happen. I can't tell. We'd love to take some questions from the audience if there are questions. So, questions?
Okay, no one is there.
And actually, sure. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just finishing chewing. So I think the vision in Helsinki is big. As was mentioned, a lot of American cities aren't quite ready to take that step, or at least may not feel ready to take that step. But I wonder if there are partial steps we can take. What you're talking about, Sonja, is servicizing these things. But can we start with consolidating the information so that if I know I want to go from point A to point B, I don't have to pull up my transit app and then my Car2Go app and then my bikeshare app and then my, whatever else. Are there baby steps we can take to start moving toward this kind of idea?
Yeah, of course there are. So you can start with definitely with a common payment system, and the option of, or that we would have transport options, of course, would be great. And that is something actually that we do not have in Finland. We don't have bike sharing or very little car sharing. So we have already this kind of huge concept, but actually we don't have all the services yet. So I think that is one thing that you can surely begin with.
Sure, and I was just going to add a thought. Ride Scout was here over the weekend. I don't know if they're still in the audience, but they talked about the ability to take all of the different apps, and so rather than having a single app for the bus and for Uber and for Sidecar and for Bridge, that there's a way to combine all of the apps into a single platform, and that seems to be a way that would be beneficial to at least get started with respect to sharing information.
Well, I would say, if we think back, in 2012, there was a TCRP report on the transformation of public transportation, institutional and business model. And it outlined basically, I would say, 5 drivers to say get started. And it focused on what is the mission of public transit, and can we just start to look at the vision. And your first step was sharing with the stakeholders. And we're encouraging that anyway. That's what public transportation is all about. Sharing what has taken place, the coordination of services. And you spoke of being a partner or not. We are a partner in our community, whether we're silent or active. And the question is, are we engaging these other service providers into the delivery of service? If nothing else, them being aware of what we do and they being aware of what we do, so if there's just any synergy. The second part, are there opportunities for more collaborative marketing, if just one website with all the various services listed? Those are just small things that in 2012, the TCRP report said we could start to take that initiative. And then the idea of, we've heard so much about new technology. Are there opportunities creating technology and with transit systems, quote, quote, becoming mobility managers? Can we open our systems to allow our shared information and being able to have one stop, one click, one source of information, but the providers are integrated in what we do? We're encouraging, we're seeing a lot more of that on the smaller systems and the rural communities than we are in the larger, mid-sized and larger communities. So I think we can learn from that, but I think to your point, so if we don't do anything, just share information with our stakeholders. They are our stakeholders. We need to know what they're doing and vice versa. And I think that is something we can just initially start.
Hi, my name is Sex Morgan. I'm with the Via Metro in San Antonio. I'm a board member there, and I've got two questions. One, how can we get involved in your project? And two, what exactly do you need from us here in the US to help you in Helsinki?
Yeah, so we invite you to Finland to start your operations.
Okay.
And in the city of Helsinki, we really want to hear your needs. What do you need from the city? Do you need some data or some interfaces to our other services, or what do you need? Because at the moment in our work, we are thinking how to implement this and what are the steps, and of course we need to hear the stakeholders, what they need from us. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Niren Chaudhary. I'm from Alcatel-Lucent. I have two questions, but I just want to give you comments about the previous gentleman's question about integrated apps. Actually, integrated apps is available just near your country, Sweden. That apps was designed actually in Harvard and MIT, and the only Swedish company has it. So that's basically including all the apps that you're thinking about it to make a context-based application. It's just a comments for you. Then my question is to Sonja. By the way, it's a great presentation. I don't know how did you do it, but one thing is that you are basically providing, my assumption is that on the service-wise, you are providing free Wi-Fi, because most of the transit agency also probably will be providing free Wi-Fi. The first question is, if you provide free Wi-Fi, you will actually create lots of bandwidth needs. That means you need also infrastructure to provide it, you know, with signaling and everything else, or video surveillance, and how you're going to manage that huge bandwidth requirement needed for moving people or giving all the information. That is the first question. The second question is, since you are combining airplane and everything else, are you thinking about providing the same services on the air? Because think about like a home to home, because people need the services from when they leave home and back home when they come out. So obviously on-air service will be important. Have you thought about that one? And the first question was how you're going to manage the heavy bandwidth requirement if you have to provide the free Wi-Fi services across the land.
Thank you for your question. So if I understood correctly, the first one was if we have free Wi-Fi and how to manage with the
bandwidth requirement for Wi-Fi. Right.
Well, we have free Wi-Fi in many means of public transportation, but well, I think most of people have Wi-Fi in their phones, and I don't know if that is a question that we have been addressing so much, at least until yet. And the second one, yeah, definitely from home to home or some other place. That is the plan, really, that you could plan and pay for your trip already from your starting point to, for example, to another country. That is really the plan and how it should be.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I think it's a great idea. But my one question is, with the multimodal transportation, where you're combining, I guess, public agencies with private entities, and sometimes they have competing goals, and such as private agencies just want better stock options, whereas the public agencies are committed to serving sometimes they have with differing needs. How do you manage that? And then with the mobility providers such as Uber and Lyft, those two are pretty much competitors. How do you address that with one mobile app as such?
Yeah, thank you. So the first one, yeah, private and public sector. So the mobile operators would be private companies, and they would kind of buy services, whether it is a public agency or a private company providing that service. So they would combine both of these services. Yeah.
His second question related to the fact that if Uber and Lyft or Sidecar are competitors, how would the mobile operator deal with the
exactly, yeah. So as the the mobile operators are also private companies, so they would sign a contract with Uber or Lyft or both or Sidecar, and it would just be market forces who makes the best contract and so on.
That'll be a market question, I imagine.
So if I understood this correctly, like the plan would be to almost like put out for bid as to which one of the suppliers could provide the best service, and then go with just one of the suppliers?
Yeah, so there are several mobile operators, and you can choose, a user can choose one of them, and the operators make their own contracts with companies that they wish, and that's how it works.
Yeah, this would become truly a market-driven commodity, so I imagine that would be part of how the mobility services would develop their individual packages based on the individual markets.
Yes.
And in Maryland, we're already, we're not using the Uber and all the other shared rides at this point, but we are using taxi, and we have 12 that qualify to participate, and the customer can select based on the quality of service. So they had to pre-qualify. I would think if we were going to do something like that, you would bring them in, they pre-qualify, and then the consumer can use whichever one best suits their need.
Thank you.
Okay, so we only have time for 2 more questions. We have 2 folks up, so we'll take those and move on.
All right, thank you. My name is Bill Correa. I'm a consultant, systems, doing work across the country with Paragon, headquartered in Dallas. But the question that I have is regarding our own transit organizations. Actually, we've got organizations, as you just mentioned, they already have contracts with taxis. We've got contracts with other providers that provide services with buses for mobility impaired personnel, et cetera. So the APTA and its members are already engaged in a form of that collaborative effort by contracting other vendors. And therefore, as you mentioned a moment ago, they can pick from taxis in Maryland. So the committee obviously is very interested, the APTA committee is interested in looking at this because APTA, I see, and its members are not only going to be players, but they can actually be considered to be these operators or these, to perform some of the functions that she just described. So I'm interested in hearing what dialogue is being held currently about that, and what cities across the U.S. that are APTA members are already engaged in this type of activity.
I'll start. The Mobility Management Committee is really getting engaged in this conversation, and so while we were here, we had the ability and over the last few months to see who all the transportation network companies, the providers are that are out there that is growing part of the economy, I think, and there's also a number of different technologies that are being developed that can help enable some of these connections as well. I think the next important piece is going to be to understand sort of from a policy perspective, what are the organizational things that transit agencies need to understand to make sure that they're part of that conversation in their communities and understanding what they need to do at the transit agency level to participate fully in developing these broader mobility scopes. So welcome your participation in the Mobility Management Committee and having that conversation with us.
Yeah. And along that line, there are several, and I spoke of the TCRP report. They studied 12 to 14 different cities that were doing some type of transformation along this line. And that was 3 years ago, and I can imagine those cities are progressing, utilizing the current technology and all. But another, and I'll give a plug, we were able to implement the National Center on Mobility Management. And that's the source that all of us can go to the website and actually see what is taking place around the U.S. and what are some of the innovative projects that are out there. But more importantly, they do webinars and training so that those who are interested in wanting to take that next step, it's available. And just plug in and learn more about the program. You don't have to necessarily come to the committee meetings, but there are opportunities going on each month making our users aware of opportunities among the mobility management strategies.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah. Last question.
Okay, Marlene, thank you. Joel Valinsky with the National Center for Transit Research. It's so different and there's so many complexities that it's sort of hard to get your arms all around it, but I have this sense that in 8 to 12 years we'll look back and say, oh, well, of course, you know, we should have been doing this all along. So I just congratulate everyone that's recognized the opportunity and who are working on it, and we look forward to participating as well. My question for Sonja is with automated vehicles, you know, all the rage over the past couple of years among discussants. And I was curious if Europe is a little bit ahead of the United States in the potential implementation of true automated vehicles, driverless vehicles, and how that might play in to this scheme.
Thank you. I see autonomous vehicles as one of the services in this service package. So those autonomous vehicles would be used as a service, car as a service, which would be serving several people. So this way, also those autonomous vehicles, which are also quite expensive, would be used for multiple users.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sonja, for the information presentation today. I think we have opened a dialogue that we, as an association, as an industry, need to continue to have, and look forward to talking with as many people as will talk to us about this really engaging topic. Thank you so much, Sonja, for your presentation and for joining us in Houston. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Catherine. I'm sure that we'll all collectively keep talking and want to encourage everybody that's here to do that as well. And I want to thank again very much Arcadis, who sponsored this session. It was terrific. And T. Wayne Holcomb, he's still here. He's in the back. But thank you very much for letting us have this and great session today. Thank you, everybody. And now I'd like to invite our fearless leader, Michael Millennials, to close out this annual session.
Thank you, Ron, Catherine. Let's give a great big hand. Isn't this an amazing, amazing group? Doesn't this show the value of APTA? So many of us have read or heard about what was going on in Helsinki. We just heard from the person who wrote the paper. This is APTA value. Thank you so much. It was incredible. Very, very well done. And again, thank you to Arcadis for sponsoring this. It was truly very much appreciated. And what a great week we've had. We've had thousands of attendees, almost 300,000 square feet of show space on the floor, 800 vendors, 80 technical sessions on the floor, and a great annual meeting as well. What a great expo this has been. It all rolls up into one great expo and annual meeting. And as you go home, carry this message with you. Every single person you meet can be a transit advocate. Take a look at this great video that APTA is creating that shows us how we're creating a grassroots army to help have more public transportation warriors in our army moving our message forward. This is a great little video.
Why should you be a voice for public transit? Just watch what happens when public transportation enters the picture. Your community comes to life, and you're able to go to work, get to school, do some errands, see the doctor, catch a show, watch the game. That's because wherever public transportation goes, our community grows, creating jobs all over America, helping local businesses flourish, generating investments in our communities. Voices for public transit are everywhere, speaking up on key issues, raising our concerns on the state and federal level, and making sure our elected officials understand that we need to invest more in public transportation. Because public transportation benefits all of us, even those of us who don't ride it. It increases property values, alleviates congestion, and reduces pollution. Public transportation opens the doors to where you want to work, where you want to live, and how you want to live. Public transportation helps take all of us where we need to go. But it's a two-way street. Public transportation moves us, but we need to keep it moving too, and expanding and improving. Which is why we need your voice. So come on board and become a voice for public transit. Join us at voicesforpublictransit.org.
Wasn't that cool? We've got 80,000 advocates out there, so go home, help us get over 100,000, get more people signed up to be advocates in our transportation army. Before you leave here, make sure you get out, see the floor one last time. The expo floor is open until 3 o'clock today. You can also attend the FTA Major Capital Investment Grant Workshop and the Transportation Safety Institute Workshop, as well as Houston Metro's outstanding technical tours. And it's not too early to pencil in your calendars. Our annual meeting next year, we're going to be in San Francisco this time of year, and we know that all the great agencies in San Francisco look forward to hosting us. APTA's annual meeting and bus conference will be, our bus conference will be right down the street in Fort Worth, and we're going to have our rail conference in Salt Lake City next year. So put them all on your calendars. Don't just pencil them in. Put them in ink because we know you're going to be there. Thank you to everyone who's been here. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to Sonja coming all the way here to join us today. Y'all have a safe trip home, and thanks a lot for being here. Take care.